Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you are welcome to this summer seed sowing video. Now today I'm going to sow 3 beautiful varieties of delphinium. Oh, delphiniums, those amazing, tall, meaty spires of majestic blue. Well, mostly blue. And as we all know, blue is such an unusual, the least used flower colour that there is. So it's very special to have such striking and garden-worthy plants that are a very pronounced blue. So today I'm going to sow 3 types of delphinium, as I mentioned, and also a few snapdragons and also some salvias. So let's get on with the video. So why sow delphiniums? And there are 2 reasons really. In the middle of summer, what else are you going to do? You have a space in your routine. Okay, maybe you're on top of the weeding, maybe your garden is looking wonderful and you want to think about what you're going to do next year. You really don't want to be sowing annuals in the middle of summer, although you can look at some sites and they will tell you that you can sow certain ones, but I just find it too discouraging because they have such a short lifespan by the time they get growing, and then winter comes in and that's the end of it. So try delphiniums. And the reason why I say to try delphiniums is that perhaps you're the kind of gardener who's mastered annual sowing and you want to try something that's a bit more permanent, that you're going to have in your garden for many years, but you're a bit discouraged because you know that sowing perennials is more complicated than sowing annuals. Well, I say try delphiniums. They are quite easy. If you're new to the channel, you should know that I garden in what roughly equates to as hardiness zone 9. I'm in the south of Ireland, so we don't use that system at all here, but just take it as a rough guide for getting stuff through the winter. And we're here in my unheated greenhouse. So once these seeds are sown, this is where they're going to overwinter until such a time as they're big enough to go out into the garden. And before we get into it, let's have a quick look at what I've chosen. Now, 2 of the varieties of delphinium that I've chosen are Pacific Giant strains. So the first one we have is Bennery's Pacific Black Knight. And I chose this one because I am currently collecting plants for a red border down the end of the garden. And it's not going to be all red, but this tall purple would look absolutely amazing down there. I also have another Pacific Giant, this time a white one because, well, you know, white. There's so many places in your garden where you can put white plants, and a tall white delphinium is just the ticket. And then the third variety is the Magic Fountain strain, and this features 2 different shades of blue which are held beautifully on the spires. Now, if you look online, you're going to read a lot of bad press about Pacific Giants. And I guess the word is that the Pacific Giants were bred on the west coast of the States, and they were bred for sumptuous, fantastic flowers and plants that would bloom twice a year, but that they weren't reliably hardy. I don't believe it. I had a big clump of Pacific Giants which I raised from seed in my garden for many years, and I can tell you that they were perfectly hardy over here in this part of the world. Now, I've chosen varieties that should come true. So for example, this one, the dark blue Magic Fountain, is supposed to produce uniformly flowers of this colour, more or less, and I do hope that's what's going to happen. We're going to find out. You can buy mixed packets and that'll give you a variety of the shades that are out there. I guess the main thing with delphiniums is that you want spikes with flowers that are clustered very close together. You don't actually want to be able to see the spike through the flowers, and I hope that's going to happen with these, but we shall see what we get. And we shall perhaps discard the ones that have a bit too much spike compared to flower. But look, aren't they absolutely beautiful? What else? What other perennial can you get as easily and reliably from a packet of a few seeds. Let's give it a go. Now, whenever I sow perennial seeds, I choose a deep pot like this. You've seen I do it differently with annuals, and we won't go on about how I do it with annuals, but I will link to a video at the end that shows you how I sow annuals and biennials. However, perennials are different, and they do seem to have deeper roots than annuals, so you need a deeper pot. The disadvantage of sowing a whole load of seeds in a small pot like this is that you're going to have to prick out. Oh yes, you're going to have to separate them. A fiddly job which nobody particularly likes, but it isn't difficult, and I'll link to a video at the end which shows you how to do that if you have any qualms about it. My mix for the delphinium seeds is 3-part seed compost, to try and find seed compost rather than regular potting mix, because it has fewer nutrients than the ones that you'll buy for potting on plants. And 1 part perlite. Well, ideally perlite. I've run out of perlite, so I've substituted it for vermiculite in this instance. Then mix them all up together. So now we're going to fill up the pot. Once your pot is full, take another pot of the same size and just tamp it down a bit at the top. This just gives you a nice flat, even surface for seed sowing. We're now going to moisten this, and we'll place the pot with the compost into a tray of water and leave it to just draw that water up. This is called bottom watering, and here are a few I've prepared earlier. I'm just going to push this back and take out one of these pots because we're going to sow the seeds. Let's just put it there. We're going first with the black knight seeds. I have 50 seeds in each packet, which is a nice number. Wouldn't it be fantastic if I got 50 plants? And here we can see that the seed is quite small, but not too small that you wouldn't be able to handle it. And I will just pour this out into my hand. So 50 seeds divides evenly and nicely into 25 per pot. And that means 5 rows of 5 seeds. Next up we have the Magic Fountains Dark Blue. Just that little bit fiddly to get out. We'll get there in the end. The next step is to top all of these pots with vermiculite. This is the same substance that we used in the mix instead of perlite, and it's great for just, I think it kind of avoids dampening off. In any case, it stops mosses and the such like from growing on the surface, and perhaps keeps the moisture in as well. Anyway, it's invaluable for seed sowing, and I would never dream of sowing seeds without putting some of this on top. And then just press very slightly down, and this step is to ensure that the seeds make intimate contact with the moist soil, and that will trigger them to grow. And now I'm just going to place all of these pots into a transparent box. If you don't have a transparent box, then you can cover them with the lid, transparent lid of a seed tray or a plastic bag. But I have this box, so I will make good use of it. And the box, of course, has a lid that goes on and just traps the moisture in. Now, the trick with this is to have your seeds with the right amount of moisture before you put them in the box. If they aren't moist enough, if you haven't soaked the mix before you put the seeds in, then your seeds aren't going to get going because they don't have enough moisture. So you need to ensure that a little bit of moisture is kind of pooling on the lid, some droplets, but not too much. The box is a closed system, so if you got the moisture right to start with, then you shouldn't have to water at all until your seeds germinate, at which time you'll take off the lid and take them out, and then of course you need to check them every day. Delphiniums typically take 14 to 21 days to germinate, but if you buy a packet of mixed seed, that's mixed colours, then it can be erratic. Some will germinate earlier than others. And if you have a packet of mixed seed, whatever you do, don't throw away the pot once the first few delphiniums have germinated. The ones that haven't germinated yet may well be the best colours. I have two additional things to say about germinating delphiniums from seed. Now, for these to germinate, ideal temperatures are 15 to 20 degrees centigrade. They don't like it too hot. We have a very kind of dull summer here in Ireland, so I should be okay with leaving this box in the greenhouse. However, if the temperatures go higher than 20 degrees, I'm going to have to take this box and put it outside in a sheltered position in the garden, because if they boil, then there'll be no germination. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you collect delphinium seed yourself, or even if you buy it far in advance, you need to store it in a cool place. You need to store it in the fridge, in an airtight, dry container in the fridge. And then it will be good to sow when you get round to it. Okay, now where did I put those snapdragon seeds? And now we're going to sow a few more seeds, snapdragons mostly. So I have two types of snapdragon that I want to sow, both of them red and both of them double. One of which belongs to the Madam Butterfly strain. Oh, this is such a fantastic strain of snapdragon that I've grown several times in the garden. When I originally started growing it, you couldn't buy seeds except of mixed colours, but now you can get individual colour strains, and this is going to look fantastic in my red border down the end. Yeah, snapdragons are generally annuals, or sold as annuals, but they will come through the winter unless you have a particularly harsh winter. So certainly by sowing them now, I'm going to have big bushy plants for next year. And I'm growing a biennial as well. So this is a salvia called Vatican Pink. Comes highly recommended by friends of mine, the people in Ardon Garden, which I visited a few years back. Anyway, a fantastic plant. And normally I will sow a lot of biennials at this time of year, but I'm not this year. This is the only one. If you want more information on biennials and which ones to choose, etc., I'll link at the very end of this video to one where I sowed, I think, about 6 biennials a few years back. Now, just for convenience, I'm using the same mix for the snapdragons as I did with the delphiniums. I don't think it's necessary to put that perlite in there, but we're going with it. And I'm starting off with my Madam Butterfly, wonderful red, fantastic crimson seeds, and I'm just going to do 5 rows of 5 in the same way as I did with the delphiniums, and we will prick them out after they germinate and grow a little bit. I think I forgot to mention that I've decided to go with a red theme for my new flower bed down at the very end of the garden. I did originally tell you I was doing white and pale pink, but anyway, I've decided on red. My heart just wants red, and red is what we're going with. Now, it's going to be a border packed with flowers of very, very saturated colour. So there's going to be no white in there at all. It's going to be red, not even perhaps with white eyes. Well, we'll see if I can manage that. And maybe some dark purples. It's going to be fantastic. And I do know that if you have a border with deep colours like this, it makes it seem closer. It's not the conventional way to populate a border that's far away in your garden. Borders that are far away in your garden, you populate with pale pastel colours, so they look like they're even further away, and it makes your garden seem bigger. I don't care about that. I want a nice red border, and if it looks like it's nice and close and right beside the viewer, then all the better. I should also mention that snapdragons can be sown in spring, and they, in theory, can be sown in late autumn or winter. I did try that last year and I wasn't successful. I think it's not something that I would recommend in my climate. The seeds just rotted. I think maybe if you start them off on heat and then move them out to the greenhouse, but if you've got an unheated greenhouse in winter, then you're running into trouble with very young, very immature seedlings. So I'm sticking with the regular spring and summer sowing from now on. And by the time we head into winter, these seedlings will have gotten a bit stocky and be able to tolerate the temperatures just that bit better. And finally, the salvia. And thankfully, I have to say that the salvia seeds are a little bit bigger than the snapdragons. The snapdragons were shocking small, very challenging for me to actually sprinkle them evenly in the pots. But I hope I did it. We shall see. And here we go with the 30 Vatican white seeds. And I'm going to put all of these into the same pot. I do like the idea of the box, and I found it useful when going away on holiday as well. I know this isn't recommended, but I did put some moisture-loving house plants in boxes like this when I went away for 2 weeks, Nepenthes namely. And it just trapped the moisture in a bit and helped them survive. I also did it with Streptocarpus. There were some casualties, but I had plants survive that wouldn't normally have survived if nobody had been watering them for 2 weeks. Okay, there we go. Those are my seeds sown, and you can tell already how dull the weather is in Ireland this year because there's rain falling as we speak. So I think these delphinium seeds are going to be fine in the greenhouse. It shouldn't go above 20 degrees centigrade. Anyway, if you've never sown perennial seeds before, I highly recommend that you give delphiniums a try. And if you've already grown perennial seeds and haven't grown delphiniums, then do give them a go. They're quite easy and very, very rewarding. Perfectly hardy as well, most of them. As long as you steer away from larkspur. Larkspur are annuals, but delphiniums are perennials, and most of them that you would buy in shops, in seed shops, would be hardy for us outdoors in this part of the world. Thank you as always for watching this summer seed sowing video, and I'll be back next week with, I don't know what I'll bring you next week, but it will be something lovely. Thanks for watching. Bye.